What this backpacker found in the frozen Canadian tundra is hard to explain. A blizzard had raged in this area the night before, shifting the landscape, but nobody could have predicted that it would reveal this massive previously buried plane. The backpacker who found it figured that it was abandoned, an old relic forgotten about by the world. But then he managed to open it and look inside. Lucas Thompson pushed forward through the snow, his boots sinking deep with every step. The blizzard that started 2 days ago had finally passed, which meant it was go time for Lucas and his journey.
But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories.
Lucas waited out the storm in a cheap motel on the edge of town where he planned the days ahead, but no planning could have prepared him for this. With the skies clear, he could finally start the trip he had planned for months. Lucas studied maps, packed his gear, and timed it all carefully. The blizzard was expected. He knew it was coming and waited for it to move on. Lucas' plan was clear. Even though the frozen tundra of northern Canada could be highly unpredictable, the idea was to hike for 30 miles into the frozen wilderness, camp for 2 nights, and then loop back. Just him, his pack, and silence. After losing his job, breaking things off with his fiancée, and hitting 42 with nothing to show for it, he needed a boost in his life. But nothing could prepare Lucas for what he was about to find. The path uphill was slow, and the snow didn't make it easier. Lucas's legs burned as he pushed forward. Every few minutes, he adjusted his pack or checked his map. He walked up a tall ridge, and according to the map in hand, he would then overlook a vast snow-filled field below. But when he reached the top of the hill, he saw something else. Lucas saw something that was not on the map, something that would change his life forever. There was indeed a large open landscape below him, filled with a thick layer of snow, but right in the center of it, something stuck out from the white fluff. Lucas stopped and squinted at it. The object was at least 100 meters away from him. Lucas could see it was large, and the object's color in the white snowy surroundings stuck out like a sore thumb. At first glance, it looked like a rock, but something about it felt off. The object was too smooth and unnaturally formed to be made by nature. Lucas walked toward it slowly, and when he got within throwing distance, he instantly saw what he was looking at. This, indeed, was no rock or frozen tree trunk. It was made of metal and had side panels with lettering on them. That's a plane! The aircraft was still mostly covered by snow, and it must have been hidden underneath this thick coat of white powder for a while, Lucas deduced, since the frostbite on the metal parts was severe, but that was about to change. Lucas's interest was piqued, so he stuck around to dig out the plane. Lucas wanted to discover what other mysteries were buried beneath the snow, so he grabbed a multi-tool from his backpack, which was a clever little device. The multi-tool was the first item Lucas bought for his journey since it could be transformed into multiple other instruments, including a blong. Lucas started with the outline to get some sense of the size of the plane. The aircraft stretched longer than he expected. "What a bizarre find," he whispered as he gazed upon the large frozen vessel. Lucas was very aware of the uniqueness of his discovery and took his time to take everything in. After 2 hours, Lucas's work cleared most of the plane. But it was still buried deep at its base. It was foolish of him to expand this much energy on it since he needed every bit to stay alive in the biting cold. Lucas knew he should have set up camp before sundown, but sleep was hard to find not because of the cold, but because of what might be hidden in the plane. The only entryway was a passenger door by the wing, frozen shut from years of ice. Lucas kept staring at it, willing it to open. He'd come here seeking adventure, ready to handle whatever he found, and now the harsh Canadian wilderness had placed this wreck in his path. The frozen handle refused to budge, but Lucas was no longer just curious, he was determined. Dropping his backpack, he took out matches, a flint, a thermal blanket, and his multi-tool. If he could thaw the door, he might get inside. The risk was real, wasting precious supplies in this cold, but he decided it was worth it. He searched a cluster of small trees for dry wood and tinder. With only dry socks and torn paper for kindling, he chopped down the thinnest tree he could find, then piled branches, kindling, and fabric scraps near the door. Striking the flint, he coaxed a spark into flame, shielding it from the wind until it grew. The fire's warmth spread across the door's frame, melting ice and sending up steam. As daylight faded, Lucas decided to camp beside the plane, letting the fire work through the night. The wreck would shield him from the wind, and the heat might free the door completely. In the morning, he gripped the handle, pulled hard, and at last the door creaked open. He ducked inside with his flashlight. Torn seats, dust-covered panels, and frost coated every surface. Personal items lay scattered: an old backpack, a broken headset, a notebook with curled pages. The plane had been here for years, but how it ended up in this remote spot was a mystery. Lucas searched for any documentation but found only rusted metal, torn fabric, and frostbitten plastic. Then he heard a faint tapping. He froze. It was too steady to be the wind, like fingernails on metal. Cautiously, he moved deeper into the cabin, his beam sweeping the walls. The tapping came again, closer this time, then turned into a low creak. The air felt heavier, and unease prickled his skin. A soft dragging sound followed, like claws sliding over a hard surface. Lucas turned sharply, scanning the cabin. Sweat gathered under his layers despite the cold. He told himself it was just the wind, but the sound persisted. He began to retreat, but his heel caught on something, and he stumbled, crashing to the floor. His flashlight spun away, coming to rest on its side. Pain shot through his arm as he sat up, reaching for the light. His hand brushed against something cold and metallic. He looked over and saw an old lever, tucked beside the floor panel. His fall had jarred it loose, and something behind him groaned in response. A low hiss sounded behind him, followed by a soft thud. Lucas turned quickly. A panel at the back of the cabin, a wall he assumed was solid, had shifted open, and a narrow illuminated crack now showed behind it. Lucas crawled forward, heart pounding. "It's a doorway." "Hello?" Lucas called out again, louder this time. "Is someone there?" His voice echoed down the narrow passage behind the new door. He waited, listening. At first there was no response. Then, from inside the darkness, something shifted, followed by the sound of slow, cautious footsteps. And that's when he saw it, a figure. Slowly, a man stepped into view. His clothes were worn and torn, layers of fabric wrapped tightly around him. His face was hollow, pale from cold and fatigue, but he was breathing. Lucas couldn't believe that someone could live in here. The man didn't answer right away. He looked like he hadn't spoken to anyone in a long time. His lips were cracked, his eyes glassy. He nodded faintly. Lucas took a step forward. "I'm here to help. I didn't know anyone was still inside." The man leaned against the door frame, clearly weak. His beard was overgrown, his fingers trembling. "You're real?" he whispered hoarsely. Lucas swallowed hard and nodded. "Yeah, I'm real. I found the plane. I lit a fire and managed to melt the ice on the doorway. We need to get you warm." The man's eyes welled up. "I thought I was dreaming." Lucas reached out carefully. The man flinched, then allowed himself to be steadied. "What's your name?" Lucas asked. The man shook his head slowly, too tired to answer. "Okay," Lucas said gently. "It's all right. Let's just get you out of here." He wrapped an arm around the stranger's shoulder and guided him forward. Each step was a struggle. The man stumbled once, nearly falling, but Lucas kept him upright. "How long have you been in there?" Lucas asked. No answer, just a shallow breath and a faraway look. Whatever happened here, this man had been isolated for a long time. And somehow, against all odds, this man survived it. Together, they made it out of the narrow compartment and into the main cabin. Lucas steadied the man, then guided him toward the exit. The bright daylight shone into the cabin, sparking fear into his companion's eyes. Lucas could already see the outline of his makeshift shelter and the still smoking remnants of the fire from last night. They stepped outside, the cold air hitting harder than before. The man winced, shrinking against it. Lucas pulled his thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it tightly around the man's shoulders. "We'll get you by the fire," he promised. "Hang in there, you're safe now." They sat there for a while, the only sounds being the crackle of the fire and the wind brushing past the trees. Lucas stared at the man, still trying to process what had just happened. A part of him had come out here looking for answers. He never expected to find someone else still holding on. Lucas knew this wasn't over. He had questions, hundreds of them. Ready to speak? Who was this man? Why was he here? How long had he survived inside that frozen wreck? But for now, none of that mattered. What mattered was that he was alive, and somehow Lucas had been the one to find him. The man ate his food slowly as instructed, and when the pouch was finished, he's searching for what seemed like his first words in years. His plan for survival, Lucas sat frozen, listening intently. "I can't believe you survived this long," he said. Tom smiled faintly. "Neither can I." The emergency cabin behind the wall was better insulated, so I sealed it off and rationed out the plane's canned food supply the best I could. I ate sparingly and slept when the temperature allowed it. But after a while, I started realizing this was my tomb. Lucas stared into the fire, his thoughts racing. "You stayed alive, alone, in that darkness, for years." Tom nodded. The snow compounded on top of me, freezing every exit shut. I heard rescue teams come by during the months, but the snowpack muffled everything. After a while, I stopped trying to call out for help, knowing nobody saw or heard me. I needed to save my strength. "But then," Tom added, voice cracking, "you showed up. Just like that. A fire, a light. I thought I was hallucinating, but you were real." Lucas shook his head in disbelief. At the hospital, Tom was stabilized, warmed, and examined. Aside from malnourishment and frostbite scars, he was in surprisingly good shape. But the most emotional moment came later that night, when his family walked into the room. Gasps, sobs, Hugs that wouldn't let go, Tom was no longer lost. After 4 frozen years, he was finally, unbelievably, home again. Lucas stood nearby, watching the reunion unfold with quiet pride. He came into the wilderness hoping to find himself. Instead, he found Tom a man who had fought to stay alive through impossible odds. The snow had taken so much, but in this strange twist of fate, it also gave something back. Lucas smiled softly. For the first time in years, he felt alive too.